Hi, y'all. One of the things that I'm really missing right now is going out and meeting people for coffee. It helps to pretend that I'm sitting in our class, which I'm usually drinking, my second or sometimes third cup of coffee while we free write about our projects. So that's something that's kind of helping me think about, writing and where I am right now. I was just kind of wondering, what do y'all miss about meeting in person for class? If you want to share your thoughts, feel free to post to the discussion board called Digital Days. I made this discussion board so that we can kind of just reflect on what's going on, maybe post some fun things. So you could write something there, you can post images, you can link to videos you're watching, really anything that you're doing. I just want to make this a fun discussion board so that we can have some of those conversations that usually occur during class, but while we're working from home instead. Anyway, on to today. We're going to use the sample essay you read, Project 3, Sample 1, Medical Marijuana, to talk about what you might put in your introductory paragraph, and then we'll talk about some general organizational features. By analyzing the Project 3 sample, you'll be able to start drafting the organization for your own Project 3. First, let's look at the introduction. In the introduction, the writer makes some really good moves. The first thing she does is identify the audience, or the specific stakeholder group she's arguing to, as legislators. You'll see that I've highlighted the stakeholder in purple. At first, I thought she was going to specifically write to Jeff Sessions, but as the introduction and the rest of the paper continued, it became clear that our writer uses Sessions as an example to talk about legislators in general. The second move she makes is stating the argument this stakeholder group makes specifically. You can see this underlined in red. During her research, the writer found that legislators generally refuse to acknowledge the medical benefits of marijuana. This refusal leads to the classification of medical marijuana as a Schedule I controlled substance. Our writer also notes that legislators say there is not sufficient evidence to support the legalization of medical cannabis. This statement also does a good job recognizing what argument the stakeholder group makes. The last move that the introduction makes is that the writer sets up the type of argument that she's going to make in her own project. So this essay is an example of a proposal. The writer first argues that marijuana must be reduced from a Schedule I controlled substance classification. So she's arguing that we first need to redefine how we think of marijuana. Then she goes on to say that marijuana should be sent to the FDA to conduct further testing. I underlined it must be reduced from a Schedule I controlled substance classification because this is a clear statement of the writer's argument. This statement sets up the rest of the paper to propose how to reclassify marijuana. Remember that for each type of argument, so argument of fact, definition, quality, and proposal, you can find sample essays with organizational notes in your textbook. The annotated proposal sample begins on page 390, and the introduction says, the paper opens with a personal anecdote describing an issue, social media addiction. I'm pointing this out because our writer doesn't begin her proposal with a personal anecdote. Instead, she begins by giving evidence from sources to show her stakeholders' argument. She made this decision because she felt that using evidence would give her more credibility with her audience. Use the sample essays in your book and the ones posted on Canvas as guides, but just like all of the other papers that we've written and looked at this semester, know that these aren't strict recipes for organization that need to be followed exactly. You want to use your audience and analyze them specifically to figure out how you're going to move into the paper and best make your argument to them. As you saw in the rest of the paper, the writer uses specific case studies of medical marijuana helping children to make her argument. This is something that helps strengthen the argument and gives her really strong evidence to use throughout. While the writer makes a successful argument overall, there are a few places that do need some revision. The examples here show how the writer moves slightly off topic. On page 3, she says that in addition to the numerous medical benefits, medical marijuana has the potential to end the opioid crisis. This is a really strong claim that she's making, And she does go on in the paper to support this claim with evidence talking about how medical marijuana eliminates the risk of addiction. But this claim isn't furthering her proposal of how we should work to reclassify marijuana. So if I were the writer, I might, remove this from my paper. This might be something that goes in the conclusion to talk about other benefits, but this gets a little off topic. Another example where we get a little off topic is on page 4. So the writer talks about non-medical benefits that occur from legalizing medical marijuana. While legislators might be interested in these non-medical benefits, this detracts from her overall argument that we should reclassify medical marijuana and the purposes for marijuana. I also want to point out that some transitions between paragraphs are needed. Here, the writer is moving from the introduction into the first body paragraph. While she uses currently as a transitional phrase, the information jumps from the writer giving her argument to the fact that 90% of Americans support legalizing medical marijuana. Just because there is a transitional phrase doesn't mean that this is perfect. Instead, the writer could have said something like, many Americans can see the benefits of medical marijuana. According to Mirren, 90% of Americans are in support of marijuana specifically for its medical benefits. The way that I just revised this transition is stronger because it clearly connects the first body paragraph to the argument made in the introductory paragraph. In general for this project, I'm looking for an introductory paragraph that appeals to your audience, clear transitions between paragraphs, and an acknowledgement of the counter-argument. So for the counter-argument, you can see an example of this on page 5 of the sample essay, where the writer recognizes why legislators are hesitant to legalize marijuana. Lastly, I'm looking for a conclusion that reinforces your argument. As you're working on your conclusion, make sure that you reference those textbook pages because each conclusion is going to have a slightly different way that you're going to wrap up your argument, and the textbook pages give a really good example for all 4 types of argument there. Now it's time to think about the argument you're making for Project 3. Go to the assignment called Wednesday 325 P3 Argumentative Structure posted on Canvas. Based off of the stakeholder you chose for P3 and you discussed on Monday's discussion board, choose the argumentative structure for your Project 3 essay. You've already posted about this, but now you're just kind of making it a little bit more official. Remember that you can't make a successful argument if you jump a level of stasis. For example, if you posted about a stakeholder who argues from stasis of definition, your argumentative structure should focus on definition as you work to change the stakeholder's mind to align with your definition of the issue. While you're working, review the pages in the Engaged Citizen that focus on this specific argumentative structure. I've listed the pages here on this slide, but they're also listed on the assignment on Canvas. Make sure that you look at those sample essays. I know I've said this like 3 times already, but this will really help you identify how you're going to organize your paper. For the Wednesday 325 P3 argumentative structure assignment, I want you to make an outline that emphasizes the organizational structure of your paper. It might help to review the resources posted on Canvas from the group presentations that we did during Unit 2. Remember, I posted all of those under resources for everyone. Each group specifically highlighted how we should organize and structure each argument, so that's going to be a really good resource as you're working. Make sure that you include the following in your outline: what needs to go in your introduction, how might you begin your introduction, what will go in your body paragraphs, and how might you conclude your paper. So this assignment is worth 5 points and it's due by 11:59 p.m. tonight, Wednesday 325. So I want to emphasize that this is a low stakes assignment, really to just get you brainstorming for your Project 3 paper. You want to have an outline that breaks down the organization so that you can refer back to it while you're drafting. Also, don't forget to follow MLA formatting for this assignment. I'll be looking for those general MLA formatting things we've been working on all semester. Today, we focus on setting up your intro paragraphs. We looked at a sample Project 3 paper to broadly discuss organization. For homework, you need to complete the Wednesday 325 P3 argumentative structure assignment by 11:59 p.m. Don't forget to submit your Friday 327 stakeholder profile by class time on Friday. Also, make sure to read the chapter on fallacies from the Engaged Citizen, pages 291 to 305, because you'll need that to complete our discussion post for Friday.